How's it going, and welcome to Villains Voiced, a series where I go over your favorite villains that you love to hate. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Strahd Von Zarovitch, the namesake character of the whole campaign. Of course, there is going to be a ton of spoilers, so players do not watch this, but DMs that want that added insight, go ahead and stick around because there is a lot to cover. And here he is, the man himself, the vampire himself, Strahd Von Zarovitch. Strahd stands out amongst all the other D&D villains ever, in that this villain is probably going to be the most villainous person that your players have a regular contact with. Strahd will regularly harass the party, annoy the party, talk to the party, do whatever, and eventually fight, and someone is going to lose at the very end. In addition to Strahd being a villain that gets to regularly talk with the party, we get a ton of detail on the character's background. In that book right there is so much info about the man Strahd was and the vampire that he is now. So much to go over there, so much stuff. But what's really interesting is we get all this info about who this person is, but we don't get anything in regards of actual lines that they really get to say. I believe there is 2 or 3 sentences in that whole book that actually have Strahd saying these exact words, but for this video I'm going to be going over what Strahd would be saying during certain situations. The first being the first meeting. Whenever Strahd interacts with the party for the first time, whether that be right as they enter the lands of Barovia, or whenever he harasses them at some point throughout their journeys across the lands, he will announce himself full-heartedly to the party, exclaiming out,
"Welcome, dear travelers, to Barovia. I am Count Strahd Von Zarovitch, master of this domain. I look forward to observing your endeavors in this fair land."
Now let's set the record straight here. If your players know that they're playing in a game called Curse of Strahd, and if they get met by someone that announces themselves saying that they are Strahd, then of course your players are going to connect the dots and they're going to know what's up. And of course your players probably already know that this person's a vampire. Lean into it. Your players know that this person is the big bad of the campaign, so if they meet Strahd at level 1, level 2, level 3, they know full well that they won't be able to actually do anything against him. Even if they do try to do anything against him, it's never going to work. He's got way too much HP, and he's got all these legendary actions, this and that. It's never going to happen. But what is going to happen is a cordial meeting the first time. But over the course of time, Strahd is going to regularly harass the party, because it'll be fun. It is fun for him to conquer the minds of the people that enter this land. If you can drive the party to insanity or to turn themselves against one another, that is all the better. Because anybody could just wave their hand and cast a fireball to wipe out the party, but that is not as fun as driving them to the brink of despair. One of the ways Strahd can continually harass the party is by summoning animals. As your players are marching their way across the lands of Barovia, getting from one town to the next, he can summon forth animals, declaring out,
"Come to me, children of the night. Feast upon their fears."
But the important thing to remember is, in the beginning, Strahd isn't aiming to kill. Once again, killing is not fun. Him and his minions are going to attack for a few rounds at most, and then quietly retreat. That is going to let the party know that they are in way over their heads against a foe that is letting them live. If your players recognize that they are going up against someone that is allowing their pathetic existence to continue on, then they are going to be in for a great time later on once they finally get the better hand. But no matter where the party stays in the lands of Barovia, there is no safety. There is nowhere that is outside of Strahd's grasp. He can go anywhere, and that also includes into buildings. He can, of course, just simply grab some commoner and charm them, and boom, they are let in. Easy peasy. When Strahd deems it necessary to terrorize the party at night, he will come, either announced or unannounced, saying such things as,
"What hope could you possibly possess? You are but playthings to me. You can run, but there is nowhere in this domain that my eyes cannot perceive. Learn from the denizens of this domain, and live the rest of your pathetic lives with your heads held down. Come now, is this really all you have to show me? I have slain many that held far greater power than you."
And that last one is very true. If your players do not know of the March of the Damned, then they should be told about it by some of the commoners around, and there they can witness the march of hundreds, if not thousands, of previous adventurers just like them who came up in these lands and unfortunately were slain. that is going to tell your party that, hey, you are stepping into the shoes of many that have failed. What hope do you have to succeed? Now, a fun tactic Strahd can do in a fight is he doesn't need to 1v whatever the party size is. He doesn't even need to bring in some of his allies. One thing he can do to really mess with the party is charm people. If he charms someone in the party, then he can turn them against the rest of them, and that'll turn the fight into very dire affairs. He will turn to whoever he has charmed and say to them,
"My most generous servants, aid me now."
And just like that, a 1v4 engagement could immediately become a 2v3 engagement, and that is really not good for the party. As mentioned before, Strahd will not fight to the bitter end right from the beginning because, one, he's always going to win, but two, because he likes toying with them for longer and longer. So in those first few engagements that Strahd decides to toy with the party, whether that be full-blown combat or just generally harassing them, he will leave saying such things as,
"I shall allow you to live another day of your pathetic lives. See this as a lesson in humility. You are always and forever beneath me. I needed solely my hands with you tonight. I shall savor that for another time."
Now, Strahd more than likely is always going to return back to his castle, but there is instances where maybe he decides to hide out in the local town, or maybe he dons on a different disguise, such as the always famous in the community, Vasily von Holtz. Now, the Vasily von Holtz character is a very interesting one, and I've certainly used it, but I will tell you, you should not overuse it, because Strahd should be busy doing various things. It would not make sense that he gives up literally everything to be 24/7 donned as this Vasily character who is just toying with the party. No, he should be doing other things. So me personally, I recommend that if you have Vasily von Holtz, be some commoner in town, whether that be in Vallaki or any of the other towns, that his appearances are quick and they get the job done. Now, one way Strahd will try to drive a wedge between the party is by seeking one person in the party who clearly has some desires for power and take them off to the side, usually at night when everyone else is asleep. Strahd will take that person to the side and offer to make them a vampire. He will say,
"You know you cannot win. I am far too powerful. What say you to this? Would you rebuke your friends and join me in on death? I will make you a vampire and a lord in my court. All you need to obtain such a blessing is to serve me."
That right there will easily drive a wedge into the party. Because if you do this where only the one person, specifically the player, knows about this, then they may be thinking, is everyone else getting offers to become a vampire? Or am I special? Ooh, am I going to take him up on this? Yes or no? That'll certainly start getting people to guess what everyone's true motivations are in the lands of Barovia. Now, as mentioned before, Strahd can appear anywhere, and he can easily get himself into any house, whether it be he charms some of the PCs, or he just charms a random NPC. When Strahd appears in a house and the party is completely baffled by this, he will say,
"What? You weren't expecting me? I own this land. I am the land."
Now, one of Strahd's main goals in this campaign is to steal away Irina, transform her into a vampire spawn, and lock her away so that she can never escape his grasp ever again. He will regularly try and get her to his side. He will say things like,
"Come to me. Let us be off to the castle so that we may be together at last."
If he is able to actually get his hands on her, he will say out loud,
"Fret not. You shall be provided seats at the wedding. It will be a night to remember."
Because once again, he wants to beat it over the characters' heads that there is no hope. And what better way to show that there is no hope in this land, that he can take Irina right from their clutches and in fact invite them to the wedding, all the while there is nothing they can do about it. That is definitely harrowing. Now, throughout this campaign, Strahd will interact with the party, sometimes in a combative way, in a harassing way, and maybe sometimes even in a cordial way. I've already done a whole video on Strahd interacting with a party during the dinner, which I recommend you do multiple times throughout the campaign, because that'll be an interesting one. So I would recommend checking that out if you want further details on that. Now, over the course of the campaign, your players interact with Strahd time and time again, but once they finally decide to march to the castle for the last time, that is when all bets are off. That is when Strahd is finally going to let loose. And that is when Strahd is going to show them that he is a force to be reckoned with. In that final epic engagement that will take place in and all over the castle, Strahd will continuously berate them as time goes on. He will be whittling down the party's resources time over time, but he will be regenerating. He will have the upper hand. He is in his own lair, and he has known it for far longer than your players. He will be saying things like,
"Have you not witnessed the parade of the damned? You shall soon be joining them. This castle has seen more sorrow and despair than you could possibly imagine. Those of you lucky enough to be reborn undead will have plenty of time to wallow in it. Did the Vistani woman predict how you would die? Did she foretell your ultimate demise? I thought you all could entertain me for but a bit longer, and yet it seems your usefulness has come to an abrupt end. I have watched you this whole time. I know your weaknesses. I know your fears. So you think yourself friends? One of you has betrayed the others, and will join me in rule once this is all over."
Strahd is saying these things to get under the characters' skins. He is trying to drive a wedge between the players through the thick and thin of it. If your players have that inkling notion that someone is betraying the party, then who are they going to trust? Is there any trust at all? Strahd wants that. Strahd wants to destroy the party, both in body and in spirit. Now, once again, I have gone into Strahd interacting with the party at the various locations that he is destined to fight the party in. I have made a whole video on that and given a little speech on wherever he is engaged with, he will have a little spiel, because there is always time to learn more about this character. Throughout the entirety of the campaign, your players may have learned almost everything that there is, but there's always something. Whether that be Strahd's remorse, Strahd's anger, Strahd's deceit, there is always something that can be found right there at the very end. Now, of course, your players hopefully are the big damned heroes, and they can finally put an end to this evil vampire. But hitting him to 0 HP does not mean that he is dead forever. No. If your players have not taken the exact precautions, he may transform into mist and swirl away. If the blow is struck and he is transformed into mist, flying off back to his coffin, he will expout,
"Fools! You cannot kill me. I will return and drag your corpses to the wolves."
But if your party is successful, if your party is able to stake him down or wallow him in sunlight, he will be ultimately destroyed. Once he does so, he can let out one last blood-curdling scream that shakes the very world around them. And perhaps, if your players have delved into the dark powers themselves, Strahd can let out one last warning to the party.
"Can you fault me for my own ambitions? Power overwhelming consumes us all."
Perhaps that is Strahd simply trying to redeem himself at the very end. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's Strahd simply explaining that someone else is going to take up his stead. Who knows? Strahd's death marks the near end of this campaign. There's still, of course, several things your players can be doing. They can decide to loot all of Castle Ravenloft. Maybe some people have taken up some dark powers and they're forced to stay here. Maybe Petrina raises up as the new Dark Lord and is going to take over the land. There are so many different ways on which this campaign can end, really up to your players' ambitions. But I imagine the majority of players are going to want to escape the lands of Barovia so that their characters can finally go back to the land which they truly call home. Strahd is absolutely fascinating. One of the richest villains that has ever been created for Dungeons & Dragons. And in fact, one of the oldest ones. Dating all the way back oh so many years ago in I6 Ravenloft. The birthplace of Strahd as a villain is absolutely fascinating, and it's well worth a dive into, looking at the history of all that there is. The book right there, Curse of Strahd, gives so much detail about who Strahd is and where they came from. But there's, of course, more out there. There is books all about him. There is supplements that actually show off in full detail the full chronological order of Strahd's life. And there is, of course, the fact that Barovia and Ravenloft have its own set of rich histories that your players should hopefully get a glimpse of throughout the entirety of this campaign. No matter what lines you choose to have Strahd say, and no matter how Strahd interacts with the party, make sure that Strahd is unlike any other villain that the party has ever played with. Make sure that Strahd will forever be remembered as a truly villainous villain, unlike anything that they have ever played in and maybe will ever play with. There is the chance that your players ultimately fail in their crusade against Strahd, and Strahd is able to beat them. And maybe he transforms them into vampire spawn, or maybe they just get beaten back and they know that there is no hope. There are so many different ways on how that approach can happen. But no matter what happens at the end of the day, always make sure that Strahd is the one that's doing it, because that'll make Strahd that much more villainous. And hey, if your party wipes, maybe then you bring in the next set of adventurers and they know full well exactly what they're going to be going up against. So go ahead and tell me, how do you like Strahd as a villain? Is he too in your face for you, or do you love the fact that Strahd is able to interact with the party so regularly and has an actual motivation as to not kill them? Will Strahd be able to successfully turn the party against one another, or are they going to stick true through thick and thin? And will your players be able to actually defeat the Devil Strahd, or will Strahd stand triumphant? Go ahead and tell me all those things, because I would love to hear it. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. And thank you to my amazing patrons. You guys are absolutely incredible. Thank you so very much. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.